Thanks everybody, and welcome to a simple technique to redesign your cold outreach for higher results. I'm Shannon Gregg, and I'm joined today by my colleague, but more importantly, friend, David Radin. He is somebody that I really enjoy working with, and I've learned so much from him, and I know you will as well. So I cannot wait for us to share some really cool, important information with you today. So, as we go over some of the most important things that we have to share with you on prospecting, which is the most important, most challenging, most frustrating, and most rewarding part of any single sales effort. We are going to share some stuff with you today that we can't wait to hear your response on. So feel free after the webinar to let us know what you thought. And there is a chat box in the bottom part of your screen. If you just sort of hover over the bottom, you'll see a black control bar that has chat. Feel free to send us a question directly or to everybody, and we will take those questions. There will be time at the end for Q&A, so you could also raise your hand and ask your question live. We are just excited to answer any questions that you have, because we know from our years in sales, which are many more than I sometimes like to admit, that prospecting can be a challenge. And that's why we are running this webinar right now, today, so that you can come away with a really interesting technique to redesign your cold outreach. So we're going to be talking about different aspects of what we call the sales machine. In this sales machine, there are 5 primary strategies and components. And what we're going to talk about today are 3 of them. So you'll see that we have inside of here 3 different ones that we're going to be focused on today. The first is strategy, the second is process, and the third is tools. So during our presentation on prospecting, those are the 3 we're going to be focused on. But we did want to let you know that in our years and research, we have found that there are 5 primary components to a well-oiled, well-functioning 360-degree sales machine. That also includes sales skills and sales operations. So if you're taking a holistic look at your 5 components, you'll be able to weigh them out and say, where am I? How can I make things better for myself and my sales team? And how can I make sure that we have everything that we need to be the most efficient and proficient sales professionals that we possibly can? So let's get started on our focus today on tools, strategy, and process. The key concept you're going to come away with today is understanding what's a sales cadence. We've all heard this before. Sales is an art. And then we may have people on the other side of the aisle that say, sales is a science. Sales is a combination of the 2. Sales is art and science. But one of the things that we have found through all of our research, through all of our lives as practitioners, is that having a cadence is the best way to make sure that you're getting predictable results from your prospecting. So, what is a cadence? You've heard of cadence before, maybe in terms of the military, or maybe in terms of a cheer or dance team. People know that a cadence is a rhythm. A cadence is something you get into when you're a great runner and you're working towards that runner's high. A cadence tells you the left foot goes with the right arm and the right foot goes with the left arm. That is something that becomes as natural to you as breathing. Your breathing has a cadence. Your sales prospecting efforts should also have a cadence. There will be so much research that we share with you during today. David's going to really explain to you how we arrived at what we think is a really great cadence. But so many sales professionals have 5 outreach points during their sales cadence. And we've seen from research that has been done all across industries that it takes about 8 outreach efforts to get in front of a prospect. So designing a cadence to make sure that you use the best science so that you can apply your sales art is going to be a really good way for you to get excellent results from your sales prospecting. So, how do most people decide their cadence? When you first start in sales, or you're starting with a new campaign, or you're prospecting in a brand new territory that's barren because it's a new industry or somebody has recently left it, where do you get started? If you don't have data indicating to you, we know that these 8 steps are going to give you good results with this sales cadence. How can you decide them? Well, here's what we see. A lot of people decide their cadence just like this. Step 1, they pick up their phone and they make a phone call. Step 2 is, hey, I'm just going to call again. This is what's going to happen next. On step 3, I'm going to call again, and this time I'm going to leave a voicemail. Step 4, we've all seen these emails. The email borders on sheer anger. I've tried to call you. You haven't called me back. Does this thing not feel important to you that I am trying to sell? And then on step 5, the average salesperson gives up. Now, you've already heard it takes about 8 touches, outreaches to reach somebody during really effective prospect cadencing. And so this cadence right here, which is scattershot, which is throwing mud at the wall, says, oh, there are 5 steps. And during these 5 steps, I'm just going to call, I'll leave a voicemail, I'll send an angry email that's going to really turn somebody off who hasn't returned my phone calls, and then I'm going to give up. And you know what happens at the end of that? Absolutely nothing. All that cadence has shown you is that these 5 steps are not working. In our cadence, which we have found requires more than 5 steps, requires a little more TLC and some data science applied to it, we use a variety of options. I want to talk to you a little bit about these today because I am a huge fan of working both smart and hard when you're prospecting for sales. It's challenging already emotionally, right? How many times have you picked up the phone to call somebody and you feel that call reluctance? You know, your armpits start to sweat a little bit, your mouth starts to get a little bit tight and dry, and you're just anticipating the rejection that's coming, either in somebody not answering the phone call or them just straight out telling you no. Well, there are a variety of things that you can use in a cadence. It's not only phone, although the phone is very important in sales prospecting. There's also email. There are different versions of LinkedIn you could use, the free version or the upgraded Sales Navigator version. You can use social methods that can be pre-scheduled, like Hootsuite or Buffer. We also use white papers. That's a great way to reach out to somebody and say, we've done this research, we've got this white paper, here's some very interesting information I want to share with you that will be valuable in your role. We use webinars like the one we're using today, where we freely share the knowledge that we've developed so that people can see, hey, these people really are professional practitioners. SMS text is something that had a big boom, went away for a little bit, and now is back in a big way. People love to be reached in the moment, exactly where they're at, which is holding their phone in their hand. There are mass emails that you can send if you want to get a very important broad message out to a lot of people who meet a very similar demographic parameter. We use confirmed, which we'll tell you more about later in this presentation. And there are other messengers you can use too. If you know that you've got a prospect that is on Google, for example, you can G-chat them. There are other different ways that you can reach out to people if you're on a similar Slack channel or an industry group. There are so many ways that you can reach out to somebody in your cadence. But what's very important is making sure that you keep solid track of what you've done and what it's returned to you, so you know how to use that information to make really good decisions on continuing cadence efforts. Here are some really important data points that we found to be staggering about sales prospecting. First of all, 92% of all customer interactions happen over the phone, according to Salesforce.com, which is just spectacular. How do you get somebody on the phone is something that we're going to address a little bit later in this presentation. Email is almost 40 times better at acquiring new customers than Facebook and Twitter. We found a few years ago that social selling became this new buzzword where everybody was talking about social selling, interacting with customers on social. And sometimes your prospects want to relax on social and not think about work. So email still works. Email's a great way to reach out to people. And your leads, your prospects, they're perishable. So if you can respond within 1 hour to a lead, it's going to increase meaningful conversations by 7x, which is incredible. So I love these data points. They really help me to keep my eye on the prize whenever prospecting time blocks come up on my calendar, and I hope you enjoy them too.
So one of the things that we've been doing is we've been making sure that this process is better than normal, we'll call it, that of what we see everywhere. We took actually 4 years before we ever put the first piece of code in the system in order to figure out what people are doing and why they're doing it, trying to understand what works and what doesn't work, and try to understand what it would take in order to make it a better process, make it scalable so that as you want to grow your organization, you can do that, make it repeatable, and make it consistent. And as Shannon told you before, there are a lot of different ways to be able to do it. She brought in a whole bunch of different tools. She talked about the fact that the sales teams don't always go by the statistics that are out there. And she also talked about a cadence earlier that was specific to calls. And we do know that a lot of times these days that the cadences, or that the typical process, has to do with email as opposed to phone, which we really didn't talk about yet. And it also talks about LinkedIn and a few others. So again, getting back to these stats that Shannon just talked about a moment or two ago, I mean, 80% of sales require 5 follow-up calls, as she said, and that reps give up. They give up, half of them give up after a single call. And you'll also notice in these stats that phone is where most of the customer interactions go, even though we use email, and that quick response is so important. So we took some of these stats and we did our own research, and we came up with some very interesting scenarios, which was, number one was, we found out that even though we know what best practices are, even though we as individuals might be trying to do business development or some other kind of outreach, some sort of sales, we know what things work, yet we don't do them. Even though they're best practices, we do not practice them. And there are reasons for that. Part of it is because easy routes become habits. Now, I like to use a paradigm. I like to use the whole concept of, you know, you're going down a dirt road with a wagon, and you followed 4 or 5 other wagons, or maybe you've brought your wagon down that path a number of times. And what ends up happening is you end up with your wagon wheels going down that same route, the same ruts that you went through before. As you do something the easy way, instead of doing it the right way, you tend to do that more and more often. You develop habits. And as we also like to say, people are like electrons. They tend to go down the path of least resistance. So easy things and the best things are not always the same. We also find that tried and true methods are called that because they really are effective. And I'm going to talk to you in a few minutes about a couple of the tried and true methods, those things that we've known for 80 to 100 years that have worked forever in sales processes, in communications, in presentations, in persuasion, and yet sometimes we just don't do it, probably because of the first 2 reasons. And we're also seeing some things that as we hear people, this is something that's become very important over the last 10 years, as we've been hearing about lean organizations and lean processes. We find that people are saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that's just fine. That's absolutely true. The problem is the concept, if not brought to the right point or a more developed point, means all you do is measure quantity, you don't measure quality. And as you skip the measuring of quality, you end up with a less effective methodology. It might be more efficient, you're just doing the wrong thing more often. So that's a problem, and you've heard it many times. In the case of a sales development organization where you're going out and trying to prospect, you hear often, you're only doing 40 calls, I want you to do 50. You're only sending out 100 emails, I want you to send out 200. Well, guess what? If they're the wrong emails, if the calls don't make any sense to the person on the other end, you are still going to be just as poorly received on the other end because you're not doing it well. If you can get a small increase in quality, you'll typically outperform a medium increase in quantity. And then once you get that quality measure done, then you work on the quantitative things related to numbers, basically work on efficiencies after you work on effectivenesses. So we started to work through this whole process. So as we started to create Confirmed, and what we're going to do now is, in a few minutes, I'm going to give you a demo of Confirmed. The reason why we're going to do it early is because we told you we were going to show you how to do a cadence better today. And we're going to show you a couple ways to do that. You will find that if you decide to use our tool, we're going to give you a couple tools today. One of them will be a spreadsheet, which will give you directions on how to get that spreadsheet in order to be able to create a better cadence later. I'll tell you how to do that. And we're also going to give you access to this tool that we've been creating over the last several years called Confirmed. And that's how to be able to execute and get what you need in order to execute more effectively. And we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll introduce that in a few minutes now, because as we go through the cadence, you'll see that we use it in ours, and it'll be easier for you to understand how the cadence works as we're explaining it if you already know what our tool does, or at least what part of our tool does. And then we'll come back to that a little bit later. We're just going to give you the sort of the big overviews. So when we were setting out our goals for this creation of this tool Confirmed, we realized that, again, effectiveness is perhaps the first step before efficiency. Manage things to become more effective, and then they will become more efficient. So we said, how do we use methods that are effective, not just efficiency of taking less time to do things because I've got 20% of my time that I'm spending on this area, and I can make that 20% more effective. You're just not getting a big win there. You're getting 4% efficiency there. But there are other ways that you could make it better. So that was number one. Number two is we wanted to create best practices that are followed. Lots of organizations create best practices. The problem is they simply are not followed. Other organizations do not even have any sense of what a best practice is. So if we can sort of give you those best practices, make them easy to follow, make them easy to implement, then they become habit and you start to work through things. We allow you to measure and track in order to guide decisions. It's a real important thing for us. And that is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. We hear that, as I said a minute ago, all the time. But again, it's more than just measuring the efficient stuff. It's a measuring the, how can I be more effective? We also thought about the idea of mechanizing it. That is, making it so that it happens automatically instead of us do it. And us as people. And it's a great idea. And we see that a lot in an awful lot of places. We thought through that a little bit, and we said, you know, there are an awful lot of places that we can mechanize and make it automatic. But if it doesn't make it better, why do we want to mechanize it? We mechanize those things that make the most sense to mechanize, not what could be mechanized, but what should be mechanized. And then after that, we say, of the things that we haven't mechanized, how can we make those things just easier to do in the right manner? And I know you've all used telephones and text, and you probably have been exposed to autocorrect and how difficult it is to get autocorrect to not be auto-incorrect at many times. That, to me, has taken it a little bit farther past what should be mechanized into what could be mechanized. That's just me. I call mine auto-incorrect. It's always telling me that I should be using the word T-O instead of T-O-O, even though I type in T-O-O. It incorrects me. So, and you get a lot of those. Then, how do you use tools and technologies in order to enhance and automate the process in order to make it work? And as we started to pull those together, what we ended up with was a process that's based on strategy, not just tactics without strategy behind it. We came up with a tool that combines best practices with insights. It uses automation, and it also can depend on analytics. So if you bring those all together, you have something that really has a significant impact for you. And an important thing that we thought about was, a lot of times when you think about who you're building a tool for, you have one audience in mind. You know, in CRM systems, they say they're for the user. They never think of the person who's the customer or the prospect. And really what it comes down to is they're really built so that although they say they're for the user, very often they're implemented in a way that they only help the leader. He gets his reports and the user goes, this takes me too much time. I can't believe you're making me do this. Why the heck are you making me go through all these iterations when it takes me away from sales or whatever it is, okay? So as we put this together, we said, we have to have a solution that is a benefit to all three of these groups. The person using it, the person who they report to, and the person who they're looking to have this relationship with, because relationships are built on trust, especially in a lot of industries that relate to business. You're talking about trust being a key factor. You're talking about being able to get that first sale, getting a lifetime value of the customer that's high, and to be able to get repeat sales. And what we came up with is what we call confirmed. We actually introduced it this year at CES, and we're hearing analysts saying really neat things like, you guys are game changers, and I've seen other products in this area, but you really thought deeply into this where none of them have ever gone. And we hope you'll feel the same way after we talk about this. But even more so, we hope that when you walk away today, you'll have a great way to be able to enhance your capabilities in your cadence, in your marketing, in your sales, whether or not you use confirmed. We just think you're going to want to use confirmed. So let's start by talking about what we do now. And I've got on the screen right now 5 different screenshots of 5 different meeting offers. What you're going to notice about them is that they all have some things in common and that they're all different. By the way, these are from Google, these are from Outlook, these are from Cisco WebEx, these are from, what else do I have on here? I think I have an Apple Calendar here. I got a bunch of different things on here. And one of the things you're going to find is that they're all fairly similar in that they all offer you an option. Let's meet today, not let's meet multiple times, or not let's, or excuse me, I said that wrong. Not let's meet, where do you want, or when do you want to meet, but it's here, let's meet. You get to either say yes or no, or in some cases you might get to say maybe. You, as the person who's making that offer, really don't have a lot of control over what they're seeing on the other end. It's a combination of what your software does and what the software or web service or email service on the other end does when they receive it. And so they all look different, and there's an awful lot of, let's call it, inconsistency, so that the different things that are coming into your inbox are different. But what's more importantly, the different things that you're sending out might be seen differently by other people. In this case, if you look at the one in the middle, that was something that was sent to me by Shannon, actually. And if you look at that one, it says that she put on her Google Calendar a meeting with David. And I might say, yeah, that's a good time for me. Yeah, we can do it by Hangouts. That's great. I'll accept it. Let me click yes. And then she gets a meeting with David on her calendar. And that's just spectacular, until she realizes, which she probably won't realize because no one ever tells her, is that I also have a meeting with David on my calendar. I don't know who it's really with until after I open it up to find out it's with Shannon. So there are these little things that the way we do scheduling these days are just high friction points, things that make us annoyed, things that don't work. A minute ago, we talked about the fact that they all give you a yes or no. So imagine, if you would, that I send you a, hey, would you like to meet at this time? If you are somebody who is reasonably busy at, let's call you a decision maker or a decision influencer, if I'm trying to get a meeting for you in the next couple of days of the week, you might have 80% of your slots already taken up. And so therefore, I've got maybe a 20% chance of hitting a slot that's open to begin with, just to even start. So why not be able to offer more slots? So if I offer you 2, now I've just doubled my chances of being able to get the right meeting on your calendar, because you might be available and then you'll be able to say yes. But if I don't hit one of those, you'll say no. If I add a 3rd, it adds another 50%. By the way, this is asymptotic. Every time I add one additional, the percentage gain goes down as a new set of win. So what happens is, as we go through the numbers, we find that offering several slots is really good. As you offer more, you get no additional gain, and you start to worry about things like decision paralysis and decision fatigue, which are 2 psychological psychoses, what do you call them? They're psychological aspects that psychologists have talked about for years, and which cause the person on the other end to avoid, delay, or simply say no. So now if you can put a couple of those slots on the other person's table to say, hey, what about one of these? You improve your opportunity highly. So here you're looking at something that comes out of confirm, just as an example, where in a single offer, different than what you saw 2 slides before, here I'm offering a choice of times. You want to meet with me at 9 in the evening? You want to meet with me at 11 in the evening? So now I've just doubled my time if I know that this person's busy in the evening. This could have been 9 a.m. or 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. as well. These just happen to be choices that we picked on this one. Similarly, we don't know whether he's close to one area or another area. He might be in the eastern part of town. He might be the western part of town. He might like Panera. He might not like Panera. He might like Starbucks. He might only want to do it in his office, or he might only want to do it by phone. Now in the virtual meeting world that we're in right now, you're actually in a position where you can send him a Zoom meeting, but he may still, or she may still be uncomfortable with Zoom and maybe much more comfortable with WebEx or with Skype or with FaceTime or some other mechanism, or even the grand old telephone. So here, with a single email, I'm able to give a choice where they can take very simple choices. You've got a choice of 2 times, and then I pick a time that works. How do I want to be able to conduct this meeting? And then everything's set, click confirm, and it works really well. And we both have meetings with the other person on our schedule. So it's more than just, though, sending the offer. It's also trying to understand and use data. So here I'm showing you just a couple different types of data points. For instance, on the top left, you see our meeting status indicators, where you can see, hey, this is how many reminders I've sent, and this is when I sent the last one, and have they opened that last reminder, and how much of a lag was it? In the case of this example, it was about 7 hours before they actually opened it. So now I understand a little bit more about their email habits. I understand a little bit about how they work, or perhaps time of day that they always work on, or how often they go. If you look at the bottom right, you'll see another set of metrics that we use, which will let you know whether they've even opened an email or whether it's sitting there delivered on their system. And it also tells you whether they've confirmed it or whether you haven't confirmed it. And it gives you some options as to what you should do once you determine what the scenario is. If it's been delivered and not opened, maybe the next one should not be an email. Maybe it should be a phone call, or maybe it should be an SMS text, or maybe even a LinkedIn message. But if it was open, you know that they're reading it, you know that they're getting it, you know that they need to have some action. If it's pending, you need to take action. If it's confirmed, you don't need to. So there's all sorts of details that you can get that will be helpful. Okay, so knowing that little bit, I just want to give you some sense of the type of metrics that we were looking at and the types of examples of how you might do things a little bit differently. Now, you don't have to use confirm to do what I just showed you in terms of sending multiple time slots. But to do it, you're going to cause, without confirmed, you're going to cause yourself additional other headaches in order to be able to collect the stuff and some other things. And I'll show you that a little bit later. And we're hoping that you use confirm. But the fact is, what we're going to go into now with these cadences, you're going to get some ideas of how to be able to put together. So let's look at a sample cadence number 1. Now, you'll notice one of the differences that I have here in this cadence from the one that Shannon showed you at the beginning, which we did a little tongue-in-cheek because it was, fun to do, but it was still very similar to what most people do. They'll set the steps up and then they'll have something, and they really don't go into a lot of detail about what's in each of those steps. In our cadences, we make sure that we have it set up on a time metric. So in this particular case, you'll see this is a 30-day, or in this case, a 25-day time metric, where on day 1, you have a couple tasks that you need to do. Day 3, you might go again. Day 4, you might go again. And you'll notice that as we go through this particular metric, that the length of time between each of the activities tends to go longer later, and we tend to be aggressive early. And there are psychological reasons for doing that, including their familiarity with you, their knowledge of how important they are to you. There are all sorts of different things that you can use to your advantage when you're doing that. So look at that, number one. Look at this, number two, that we have some particularly, we're mixing things up. It's not all about just sending them email after email after email. It's not all call after call after call. There are different things. So let's take a walk through this one. Day one, in this particular case, we decide that we're going to start our cadence with a call. So we pick up the phone, we try to call them, and in this particular case, we haven't reached them. Now, perhaps we'll get a voicemail. And if we get a voicemail, we believe it's optimal at that time not to try to shoehorn them to say, I'll call you, I'll call you, I'll call you, or call me back. Because very often they simply can't find the time to call you back in the right time period. But it's to leave a gentle message saying, hey, I'll tell you what, I understand you're busy. Tell you what, instead of me just trying to shoehorn into you by keeping calling you and trying to catch you in between meetings, or instead of making you call me back, I'm going to send you some time to talk. Be looking in your email, and you'll have a couple different choices for that. And then immediately afterwards, or a little bit later in the day, we would send them an offer, and we would say, here are 3 time slots with which you might want to meet with me. Now, again, you're going to change this a little bit based upon who the person is, how important they are to you, and other factors that you have on your calendar, which, you know, if you're using Confirmed, we'll have some other tools for you on that. But the point still remains is that you're not trying to just squeeze a 20-minute call in between their meetings, which only has 5 minutes, and you're trying to get to them when they really have time to talk to you, and you're giving them some sense of, hey, you're important to me because I'm giving you the choice of when we're going to talk. So on day one, those are the 2 things you'll do. Now with Confirmed, we have some automation put in there, as I've said before. So if you're using Confirmed, you'll send a reminder. So let me back up a step here. When we talk about this cadence in the manner that I'm talking about it today, the assumption is the cadence was put together to get that conversation going. Once you get that conversation going, you have a different process going. But if you look at the majority of the sales out there, the hardest and the most difficult thing to do is to get that first conversation. That's why you have people saying, I get 1 out of 100 calls in, or I get responses from 0.1% of my emails. You get the idea. I mean, it's a very, very low success rate. So if you do it this way, your success rate comes up dramatically, and your meeting acceptance rate also goes up fairly substantially as well. So the idea here is to do that. And again, on day one, you can do the other stuff, but you know, if you use Confirm, you'll send them 3 slots. Day 3, Confirm will automatically send a reminder. If you're not using Confirm, you'll have to do that reminder by yourself. You'll have to check some metrics and find that out. On day 4, we check the metrics. Did they open the email? Did they respond? We know whether it's pending, whether it's the meeting is confirmed, and then we'd make a determination based on the metrics. We've already tried them twice, actually 3 times, a cold call, leaving them a voicemail, the initial offer, and then the automated offer. And then at that point, we're saying to ourselves, well, look, I need to really check the data. You can check the data earlier as well, but at this point, you have to check the data. So what happened? Well, at that point, you might see that they didn't open up your email at all. Maybe it was stuck in their clutter folder. Maybe they haven't come into the office. Maybe they've got an aggressive spam filter. There's all sorts of reasons that might happen. So at that point, you might say to yourself, okay, they're not seeing my outreach. Let me pick up the call. Let me pick up the phone, and I'll call them again. And when I call them, the voicemail that I leave if I miss them is, hey, I see you didn't receive the email that I sent you. You don't have to give them any more information than that. Perhaps I just wanted to give you a call and let you know it was there. Feel free to check in your clutter or in your spam folder just in case you didn't remind it. And we can try again later if you can't find it. Or you can click in order to send another reminder. Or you can click, copy a link, and put it into LinkedIn or into an SMS text. So there are all sorts of different things you can do. And as we go forward, as I said before, you can mix up the methodology, whether it's sending more more reminders, whether it's changing the dates because you think that, oh, I made a mistake, those guys are closed this week, or I just found out from his assistant in one of these phone calls when I zeroed out that I found out that that person's on vacation or traveling or what have you. So you can mix up the data, but having that data is an important part of how do you create the next step. And then you go on forward. We generally create our cadences at minimum for 30 days. And the reason for that is that's about the right time that you can get to the minimum number of effective reaches, which is 8. And what we have found, Shannon used that 8 number before. There were some studies that say that could be as high as 23 attempts before you'll actually get somebody to go to you. And I'm sure you've all been in a scenario where you finally reach somebody. Maybe you'll even meet them at a show or at a virtual networking event or something, and then they'll go, oh, I owe you a callback. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I didn't get to you, or give you an explanation of why they didn't get to you. They're not ignoring you because they want to ignore you. They're ignoring you either because they haven't seen you as a priority to get back to, they have some other issues that they're dealing with that are very, very high priority, or maybe you haven't been able to build the trust so that they think you're any more than just somebody off the street. That's part of this process in doing the mixing up and making sure that you add value to every additional reach. Now, here's an example of a different cadence. We don't think this one's as strong, but it's an example cadence, and we know people who use it, where on day 1, they'll pick up the phone, they won't reach the person, and they'll go, hi, this is David. I'm sorry I didn't reach you. I'll try again later. And then they'll just hang up the phone, not leave a number, not leave an organization name, etc. But the next day they'll call because familiarity breeds trust, believe it or not, even if they don't know you. We see that in politics every day, that they want you to be out there and out there and out there. But the next day they'll pick up the phone and they'll add a little bit more value. Hi, it's David again. Here's my number, 412, and then they'll go back on. Well, this not expecting them to call back, but they're hoping in this particular case maybe that they think it's personal. Day 3, they pick up the phone again and go, hi, it's David. I'm from Confirmed. Here's my number. Perhaps you've been out. I'll try to call you again. But it's a brute force approach that we think is a little bit less effective than the other. But at this point, it's anecdotal because we haven't gone in and done a study about what the differences are. You can use your common sense on some of these things. And then we don't get to send the email until day 5. And when we say, hi, it's David from Confirmed again, or hi, it's David from or whoever you are, right? Perhaps it's easier if we set up time to chat. I'll send some by email. At that point, we start the process where we were before. And then we might get off the process a little bit earlier. These cadences I'm giving you are actually agglomerations of other cadences. So in this particular case, you'll see that we've set it up so on day 14, your voicemail might say, hey, maybe you're not the right person. Please refer me to the right person. And then we blow it up in the 20th day. I'll try email one more time. Please respond to that with how you'd like me to proceed. Or on 25, you finally give up. But, it sounds like you've got other priorities. I'll put you on my keep in touch list. I'll make sure that I keep you in contact. But if you want to, please keep my contact information. So there are different ways to do it. But any way you look at it, it's not just sending email after email after email saying, did you get my email? I'm sorry you didn't get it, etc., which we see a lot of. And we also hear a lot of the same things on the phone, which are the 2 biggest. The third one that we see a lot is in LinkedIn, where people will get an automated type of process and they'll keep spamming your LinkedIn account until you finally block them. So different types of tools that you can do that you can include in this process, including when you leave a voicemail, hey, we're conducting an event or a webinar on such and such a date. Hey, guess what? That's what we're doing here. You guys all came to our webinar and it came from our email outreach. Some of you might have received 1. There are occasional of you that might have received 2, but for this webinar, we only sent 1. In our previous webinars, we may have sent multiple. But if you received 1, from us this time, we knew that you've received them from us before, so we've been building rapport with you already. We're not going to keep spamming you with email, but we're putting it on social, so if we're connected in other ways, you might have come. So you see how we've included the event or webinar in here. I have a white paper that might interest you as a good way to get results. I'll be in your city on Wednesday. Can we meet while I'm there? They like that. I mean, they're often, oh, look, here's my opportunity. So you see there are different ways to be able to incorporate value into your cadence. So now we've talked about what a cadence is, how it works, how to optimize it, etc. Let's talk a little bit about the methodology you might use to create a cadence. And towards the end of this webinar, I'm going to give you information on how you're going to be able to get a spreadsheet that does what we're talking about here to shortcut the process for you, make it a little bit easier for you. And we'll give that to you free of charge. You just need to be able to talk to one of our guys, and he'll get that for you. Anyway, when you're creating a cadence, there are basically 5 things you need to do, or 5 pieces of information that you need to pull together. And when you have these 5 pieces of information, then you're able to create a good cadence. And the first one is you want to be able to take we usually use Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets or whatever it is that you want to do, and make a month-long matrix. So number down the bottom, down the left column, 1 through 31, and you have your month-long matrix. You can make it longer or shorter if you want to, but don't do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 on this one. You can create a second column for step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, but you want this to be a daily thing so you can see not only what the step is, but when it has to happen and when things are not going to happen for that particular cadence. And here's why. Because a cadence starts, and this is a real subtle point, but it's a real important part. A cadence is a prospect by prospect or lead by lead starting time. So if I've got 10 suspects that I make my first calls to on Monday, for those 10 people, Monday is my starting point for that month-long period. If I then on Tuesday call 10 more people, those people, the cadence starts on Tuesday, 1 day offset from the first. If I do that again on Wednesday, then I have a third set. So what happens is if you can get some sense of when your free time is, you can also more effectively manage your time as you decide, is it time for me to call more people and how many people should I call? Because face it, your sales team is like a machine in that it has a capacity. Each of us have got, use the number of hours you want, 40 hours a week let's use because it's the standard. And in that 40 hours, they can do a certain amount of calls or send a certain amount of emails or do a certain amount of X activity. And they can't go farther than that. They can't go higher than that. They can go less than that, but they can't go higher. So therefore, as you put it together, you need to understand what that capacity and how that works. We actually talk about this a lot in our master class. If anybody's interested in taking a master class that we call the scalable selling machine, then feel free to let us know or let Shane know. I'll give you his email address at the end. At any rate, so you do that matrix so that you show on the left column the days. The second thing you need to do is figure out what actions you're going to take on which days. And then you're going to need to define what it is that will make that action successful. Let's take a phone call, for instance. I'm going to make a phone call to the decision maker. Success is if I reach that decision maker. Failure is if I don't and there's no voicemail. Another level of failure is if I reach a voicemail. Now you also have other opportunities at that point. Press 0 in order to get to somebody else, ask some questions, etc. We're not going to go into that today because we're not going into sales tactics today. All we're talking about is cadence. So figure out what success is and figure out what failure is and what the various levels might be. Then, what do you do if you're successful? And what do you do next if unsuccessful? Well, if you're successful, the chances are you've got some sort of script. And that's where the 5th one comes in. If you're successful, use script A. You need to have that script in place. If you're unsuccessful, you might reach voicemail. You might use script 2 or script 3 or script 4 or script 5. If you reach somebody, you may have a different mode of operation. So you'll have to make sure that you know specifically what to do in all of those iterations. So that the last step that you have here is you want to make sure you have those scripts in place, and to also have templates for whatever you're going to be doing in writing, whether it's through Confirmed, we have a templating capability. If it's through your Salesforce or your CRM system, they have templating capabilities. If it's in LinkedIn, you can copy and paste from one place to another easily enough, make some modifications, customizations. That all works. But you need to have that in place before you even start to put the cadence down. Or you might be doing that interactively. So when it's all done with, it'll look something like this. Now, this is a very dumbed down version of it because it's too hard to show complicated versions here on the screen, but it gives you some sense. Phone call day one, if you're successful, you explore with that person what their needs are and you qualify them, and you probably use script A. If you fail, you leave a voicemail, which is script 1 voicemail, and then you follow it up via Confirmed. Day 2, you don't do anything according to this particular cadence, but on day 3, you let Confirmed send a reminder, or you do whatever else is that you wanted to do. On day 4, you do a status check, look at the data, both in your CRM system and in Confirmed, or one or the other, and then depending upon what you see in there, you either do A or you do B. If it was open, then you do one thing. If it was not open, then perhaps you call again or you text with script number 2. And then you follow that through the remainder of the days and the remainder of the actions. And as I said, you can actually put an extra column in here so you can put step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 if you'd like to. A lot of people like to do that. I'm trying to just make this as easy to show on the screen as possible. So the types of indicators that you might look at in order to make your decisions include: how many reminders have I sent? When was the last reminder sent? Did they open it? When did they open it? What time of day? How long since the reminder? How many they opened? Whether an email actually was delivered to them and not opened, or whether they actually opened the email. Whether my meeting is pending or confirmed. Now, one of the fun things about what we do here is we get you to confirmed more effectively, and we get you to confirmed more quickly because we take away the friction and we take away the pain points from the other person, making it drop dead easy for them to do. And then other things that we'll do for you, for instance, you look at your pending meetings. We have a dashboard that will show you, here are those that are still pending. They haven't accepted them yet. These need action. What do you want to do? And then they'll have some sort of action link that you'll be able to do. And every Monday morning, we'll send you by email a list of those that are pending that you should be looking at, so that you can then go, oh, you know what? I got to go log in and go take a look at these things and get some more data from it. If they're not pending, they won't show up on this list. Obviously, they're confirmed. And there's other emails that go back and forth as well in order to be able to give you status updates and changes. Okay, if you're the manager, from your point of view, you want to be able to have consistent meetings with your team. You want to have meetings with the individuals. You want to have quarterly meetings, and you want to have some semi-annual meetings. Of course, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know if you've been leading a sales team or a business development team. What I am telling you here is that when you look at the metrics, it's not just how many calls are you making. It's not just how many emails are you sending out. It's what's working and what's not working. Why is it that Johnny's getting 5 out of 7 offers to work and Mary's getting 12 out of 30 to work? Well, she's sending a lot of them, but she's not getting as high a rate as he's getting, but she's getting more of them. So you can start to look at those. So every week we'll send each individual on a Monday morning something that looks like this, with what I just showed you a minute ago, which will say, hey, this week you've offered 7, 5 of them were confirmed. You still have 2 pendings and 2 reminded, okay? And you, if you're a leader of the team, you'll get the same information on Sundays so that you can talk about it with your team during the week. And you'll get it for every member of your team. Both of you will get it for a 2-week period, so you can compare last week to this week. There's all sorts of neat things that you can do from this type of data, which is a combination of qualitative and quantitative. It's qualitative in that you've got 5 out of 7 that were confirmed. That says that you're doing well, but it also tells you quantity of how many you offered. Okay, so it gives you some sense. We also have in here that we will log for you automatically into your CRM system. In this particular case, you're seeing Salesforce.com. We do a lot of work with Salesforce.com. We'll also work with Sugar, Zoho, Microsoft Dynamics, you name it. There are a whole bunch of others. But we will also log it into the activities there, therefore taking away one more overhead chore from the sales team, and yet still give them more reason to look through their Salesforce or their CRM system in order to use it properly and to keep it up to date. We're just not making them keep up to date as much as they would have to if they weren't using Confirmed, which is a real big benefit in some of these CRM houses where you're getting low adoption rate for your CRM. But the other thing that we do is we add on top of this additional data, which includes things like the history of who you sent offers to, and what types of day they have typically not accepted, and what days they have accepted, and what times of day they accept and what they don't, and how long they go. So there's all sorts of data that you can get, and a cause-effect relationship that these types of lists typically don't give you. Okay, so some of the key, that's where we are on sort of the cadence, a little bit about Confirmed. Some of the key benefits that we give you include a high meeting attainment rate. We get between a 14 to 25% increase in meeting attainments. That is, when you send out offers, but you're going to get more than you would before. We give you strategic time management throughout the entire workday. Basically, that means is I keep talking about effectiveness, but we also help you with efficiency. But when we talk about efficiency and effectiveness, we merge them together. So you're not just making yourself take less time or effort on the scheduling, but you're also making the rest of your week better because you can see more. I'll show you another thing that we can show you in just a few minutes, some cool things. We'll shrink the total amount of time that you expend. It's platform independent. You'll be able to use your favorite calendar. We don't care whether it's Outlook, Google, Apple, Yahoo, you pick it. And we can show you things within that calendar. And also we can help turn the best practices into habits. We can combine those insights. We can take the automation. We can take the analytics. There are two editions of Confirmed that meet the needs of business development people. One that we call the Team Edition, one that we call the Premium Edition. In Premium, you can send out an unlimited number of offers. They can have an unlimited number of choices. You can give them place and method or time. When I say place or method, we are, next week we are introducing, in fact, I got that on the next slide. We're introducing a new enhancement which makes it drop dead easy to do virtual meetings with these offers. I'll talk about that in a minute. You'll be able to log them into your activities, into your CRM automatically, and be able to show pending time slots in Outlook or whatever platform. And then, by the way, they'll disappear once, that is the pending slots, the ones that you've offered, they'll disappear once the person on the other side chooses one of the meeting slots. And then, as I said, we've got the new virtual meeting enhancement. So let me show you what that might look like. In Confirmed, on the left, you see the types of virtual meetings you might offer: a Skype meeting, a phone call. You call me, I'll call you. My personal Zoom room could be some special webinar like we did today. I can give you a choice of 2 different webinars. And then when you're sending them an offer, you can say things like, hey, do you want to go to this webinar or that webinar? Do you want to meet by phone or do you want to meet by Zoom? Which are you more comfortable with, Zoom or GoToMeeting? Different ways for you to be able to help them better accept your meeting. So you can set those up. When they put them in their calendars, it will have all the information that they need in order to dial in, just like you're used to. The difference is that they've had a choice beforehand of the most common. I think there are about 20 of them or so that we have in there, including telephone meetings. And even if you look at this, you call me or I call you thing, you're both not sitting there waiting for the phone to ring, which happens a lot. On the right side, you see that we can give you individual places that you use a lot. I use your office or Confirmed headquarters. You can also put team places in there. They'll also go with map links so that they know where to go if they're meeting you someplace. Now, we recognize that the stuff on the left is being used now, and then as we start to come out of our homes again in the next month or two, the other stuff becomes more important again, just to give you some sense. So if you're seeing it on the scheduler page, you see it here as a list of virtual places and a list of places, and then you can click to open it up, click on these items here, and you'll open it up and you'll see them right next to the calendar, which I only see a small piece of it here, and you'll be able to actually drag things over to the calendar. We post on your calendar the pending slots. So I've just offered to George Westinghouse 3 slots. I know that on my calendar, I can avoid them because he's an important customer. And then once he clicks, you see there that it turned green. And that was kind of cool. And the others disappeared. And the team edition has all those same things, plus leadership reporting. We're in the midst of putting together some collaboration capabilities and also single billing. So just to give you some sense, we talked about meeting acceptance rates going up. We didn't talk about specifics of people. We've heard from one CTO who said to me, you solve one of our house on fire problems. We've been trying to find the solution for ages. We love what you're doing. That's great. Another guy, financial industry guy, said, look, you told me that it took the meetings, the pending times off my calendar automatically. He says, I do that all the time. I send people emails and say, you want to meet Tuesday or Wednesday at 2? And I have to go back in and find those and take them off once they accept. But this is great that you don't make me do that. And then there's a banking executive where I went into a meeting with a couple other people. And at the end of the meeting, I said, well, let's set up another meeting. Should we just put it on the calendar now? He went, oh, no. Let's use that app that you used to schedule today's meeting. By the way, I went in a different role and into this meeting. He didn't know I had anything to do with Confirmed. He just thought it was a cool thing.